Yesterday, I briefly talked to you about the condominium and environmental laws, and I shared with you the fact that the idea here is to live in a place that is obviously with no pollution, with no noise. And you will certainly allow me to speak the truth here, but in this area, quite often we go back to a place where there was this beautiful lake, and we go back and it turns into a horrible swamp filled with trash. How very often, when we were children, we grew up in this lovely forest, and we go back, and there's no longer a forest there. It is inhabited with houses that are totally placed in no order whatsoever. And the issue here, it's not just the fact of providing dwellings to human beings, but the fact of destroying forests, lakes, and rivers. Obviously, it is a problem that certainly calls the attention of everyone, and it is in itself a problem where we all must be a part of solving this issue. These environmental laws, as a matter of fact, are the ones that will be helping us to manage and handle all the ecological problems that come up within a condominium. The General Act of environmental protection and ecological balance. There are functions of the Federation, the regulation of the prevention of environmental pollution created by noise, thermal energy, light energy, scents that are harmful to ecological balance and the environment. But there is a bylaw here in order to prevent and control the ocean pollution given discharges and waste waters. There is a typical example here, and it has to do with all of those condominiums that are located within different marine developments. Mexico has important developments in Puerto Vallarta, in Cihuatanejo, in Ixtapa, in Cabos, in Baja California, in Cancun, Mazatlan. They're beautiful marinas, and obviously within these marinas, there are people that do break the laws and the rules because the recreational uh, vessels, yachts and ships, dump their wastewater off the cruise liners in the areas where they are dumping all this waste, and this happens within the docks because, for example, we have a condominium right here in Ixtapa, Cihuatanejo, where the condominium unit is right across the dock. So, as you are walking from your condominium unit to your yacht, you have it right across your front yard. And if the discharges of the wastewaters in these marine places are not under control, well, it becomes a problem with bad odors and total pollution. So this bylaw that foresees and controls the oceans, pollution, discharges, wastewater, and other areas will be very important. And I want you to recall this name, the name of this particular act, so you will look for this regulation whenever you face a problem so we can manage to protect our environment and that we will in the future be able to have a country that if we had rainforest previously, and we had rivers, and we don't have them anymore, and if we had lakes, they are now polluted, we would fight in order to contribute with a grain of sand in solving these problems. Of course, all of this is related with a country's economy. When a country is strong enough, well, it is also strong economically when they are strong environmentally. When a country is somehow behind, and that it is true that Mexico, for example, is in itself a country that is a developing economy, well, it was in itself a considered a third world country, but it does have areas that are totally underdeveloped. Mexico has a major diversity, and well, it is true that we consider ourselves to be among the first the 20 worthiest or richest economies in the world. Well, it was like the case of other countries in the past, such as those areas that are totally underdeveloped yet. And it's peculiar here to see that the ecological problems, the environmental problems, our government officials are normally supervising all of these developments. Let's say, for example, major condominium um areas that are built, let's say, in Viña del Mar or the big forest areas located in the state of Mexico, for example, where we have all these condominiums that have golf courses and horse stables. Well, they are not actually being respectful of the environment, but where they should really be involved is in those areas that are highly populated, where we have those poor uh, areas where the environmental problem lies, within all these uh, dump yards that are placed near the rivers and where the services are not provided, given these poor areas that are somehow forgotten. So, where we should be directing our attention is that the developers of these major condominium units should be considering all of the wildlife within it, be fully respectful of it. But where all of this is not taken into account is within all these irregular settlements where there is a large number of dwellings in regretful and poor conditions. It has to do with this vicious circle of misery and poverty. So, our suggestion for you is for those condominium units that are located before docks or the ocean front, there is this legislation to control pollution that is directly linked to the Civil and Environmental Protection Act. Now we will be touching upon the area regarding the maritime federal zone that we talked about yesterday, that we just slightly referred to it. Now, there is this bylaw here, which is for the use and taking advantage of the territorial oceans, navigational ways, beaches, maritime shores, and those areas that those lands that have been gained from the sea. So in these particular sector, you should take note of the bylaws. In the port, for example, here in the port of Acapulco, there is a Marine Federal Office. Any tourist development, such as the case of Cancun or Mazatlan or Cabos, La Paz, Baja California, all of them, they all have Marine Federal Protection offices. You can bring your elements before them so you can renew your license. We have already talked about the fact that the license is granted in order to take advantage of a federal area. The permit, as we have talked about it, is enabled to use in a transitory basis this license that has been given to us. And well, we have made clear that the permit is a transitory authorization, but the license is for any modification within the federal zone permit and also for ownership. It's the Act of National Assets and the Marine and Terrestrial Bylaw and the lands attached to the ocean. In the previous presentation, we have talked about the fact that it has to be 20 meters from where the waves break, and it's 20 meters within the mainland and where the condominium property is located, and that will be with a beachfront location. Now, let's talk about the preservation of documents regarding a condominium. It is very important that we keep in mind that the manager will have a good filing system, and within this area, they will be not only uh, save all the contracts regarding the labor sector for all the employees, all the minutes regarding their enrollment within the Social Security, also Infonavit enrollment, which is the national housing development industry in Mexico. Infonavit is its acronym in Spanish. And well, these have to follow a higher mandate. The Federal Labor Act mandates that the employer will enroll and guarantee the social rights of their workers. The employer has to guarantee the right of a dignified dwelling and the right of to health, to retirement, and to protect them in regards to labor accidents. This is called social medicine. In Mexico, social medicine is comparable to the social medicine that is present in Canada and France. We are a country where, given the mandate of the Mexican Constitution, and I understand that it has to do with our Article 1 to 123 of our Constitution, which states that we have to guarantee the right to a dignified dwelling, a household, right for retirement, which in accordance to our last received salary, and the right to have access to health services, medical access, and social medicine. Of course, the problem of social medicine in Mexico is a problem present all over. I had a problem abroad in a country with social medicine, and the situation is very much the same. There were 20 persons waiting for medical care, and hours will go by. And well, as it is said here, depending the size of the problem, is how you are treated. If they realize that you can wait, well, you're left there in a stretcher waiting for the most urgent cases to be tended. That is the case in Mexico. In the Social Security, great physicians in our country are also a part of the public hospital system within the nutrition hospital, the uh, cardiology unit, um, you know, Social Security services, and also the government officials have a different uh, social security system, which is specifically for state employees. And there are some state-owned companies such as Pemex, and they have their own health system with major and well-equipped hospitals. That in itself is a social right that is present in Mexico, and that normally those countries that have social medicine in place are quite similar in our ways. As I was telling you, this is a constitutional mandate that is foreseen within the Labor General Act, where any worker has to guarantee First, the right to a dignified household. This is done through Infonavit, the national housing development industry, and also social medicine, the medical service, also the retirement service, and the reimbursement or payments given any injuries or accidents that may take place with anyone who is working within a condominium unit, for example. So here we can identify, therefore, the different obligations that we have with those that are working within a condominium. I'm going uh, rather quick over these concepts because they're somehow a bit complicated. And well, we have seen that the first element that must be done within a condominium civil association is to enroll, for example, our situation, because the notary cannot enroll any action unless you are a part of the IRS. And there are penalties, for example, fiscal fraud is comparable to theft. There are penalties that go from 3 months to 3 years in prison. And if you are omitting or you are mocking any particular enrollment of a condominium unit within the federal um, income tax system, or if you provide false information, all of the tax problems are quite delicate. And I have shared with you that this comes from the Roman law times. I have shared with you that it actually dates back to Egyptian law. But in the Egyptian law, since there was no private property, it was in order to have a control of the fields. As you realize, Egypt, uh, 3,000 years before Christ, uh, it lived of the what was produced by the Nile River shores. So there were people that were controlling all the farmland, and more than controlling private property, they were actually controlling the grain production. So they were uh, roles that were not of fiscal nature at that time, but they were lists that tended to regulate the farmland production within these agricultural areas of the Nile River. Now, within the Roman legislation later on, that had its foundations first within the concept of monarchy, they started conducting census processes, basically conducting census to know who were members of the privileged social elites, who were the rich people. But since it allowed free enterprise coming from monarchy levels, there were people that were of humble origins, but they had made money as a result of trade. So the census started being implemented, and the different roles were made during the three times of the Roman monarchy, republic, and the empire time, imperial times. So also, as we have talked to in our first presentation here, it ends up with Byzantine Rome, and that has become the herds of from Germany, or the Visigoths, and finish up the Roman Empire. Their actions made it succumb. So the Roman government had private property, so they were always respectful of private property and private life, and how they had life in a community. As we have talked about the Vulpian and the Roman code, they talked about, for example, a building that had the same roof into dwellings, and they could enroll them in different records. And I quote several creators and authors There's another author that also quotes Travesetti Gonzalez. He mentions that in the Roman Digest, Papinianos, in a uh, text, is talking about two houses that were under the same roof, but they were inherited to two persons, but attaching certain areas to each of them. Within this, digestum says that if an owner will live within and will divide a house into two by building a wall in between, this is considered as two houses, and servitude could be actually implemented here. This is a Roman digester from the year 198 after Christ. What we are doing here is we're talking about the time of monarchy or the time of the republic or, well, the empire, the imperial time of the Romans. So actually, we are obviously relating the fact that within the Roman law, all of this was present. Why are we talking about this? Well, they were already susceptible to enroll their legal actions. Ventura Travesetti Gonzalez states that another not very clear text is telling us that in Rome, Ulpiano 170 to 228 after Christ, there were buildings with a common use where they had an access to a public area. This would take place, and if you recall, Rome had two, three, four-story buildings. And as I recall, they would not allow up to a seventh level. But if I go to Herculanum, there was a building. It is the house of one of the, I can't recall if it was Julius Caesar's father-in-law, right a few years before Christ. There were buildings that were 3 stories high. And, well, here we're talking about entryways. So in this particular registration process, what it has to do is with enrolling civil associations, the ones that are called condo hotels. Well, you have service, coffee services, a small supermarket, a small drug store, and since they will be uh, making money, they will have to pay income tax. And we're also going to be having the added value tax. For example, added value tax, given its acronym in Spanish, IVA, even though this is transferred to the direct tax, it does impact the one that has this earnings. And therefore, these added value tax is for the last buyer of this service. They are the ones that are going to be paying the added value tax. That means that the added value tax, different from the income tax, is a direct tax. It is an indirect tax to production and consumption that is not impacting the one that promotes the selling of the service, but it does impact the final or end consumer. Obviously, if the condominium grants services, they will have to transfer the added value taxes uh, in accordance to how much they are going to have to pay it. Let me see what other issue I have within my book. I'm not going to try to provide you with a tax, income tax uh, presentation here or a class because actually no one ever understood the added value tax previously. And it actually lasted about 1 year from being fully implemented. Though the indirect tax in France, which is 17.8%, is quite common, there are countries that only have indirect taxes because they are the best collectible taxes. No one can escape from this. Indirect taxes, whatever you purchase, if you're paying 20% in regards to what you're paying, well, it's quite a fruitful tax. It's easy to collect it, different from income tax, which is a direct tax that has to have a major bureaucratic group to be able to collect it. At this point, the IRS in Mexico, which its acronym is SAT, is trying that all of us as taxpayers would actually work for them. And basically, everything is done by us within the programs given to us. And that's how we do our tax reports, and we do it through internet means. And we can see that we are saving the federal officials this type of work. Let me see what other point I have here. Well, let's say in regards to the added value tax, well, it replaced another indirect tax, which was the mercantile tax, which, apart from the added value tax, is imposed on books, on tobacco products, on alcoholic products, even sugarcane alcohol, and for example, within the wine caps, you would already include the payable tax. And now it is a federal indirect tax to consumption and production. It's a general tax that has different indexes. There is a zero tax quite for quite some time. Border areas had 6%, then 10%, while within the rest of the country it was 10%, 15, and 16%. Now, at this point, they are now uniformed, and all of Mexico is a part of the same system. We could previously uh, have legal tax evasion because if you were going to be buying, let's say, 50 air compressors or machines for knitting or textile industry, well, you could buy those machines within Mexico. They were built, invoiced with a 16%. But if these were done through any commercializing unit in the border region, tax was down to 10%. So basically, the saving in accordance to the tax index was at the levels of 5 or 6%, and that is called a legal evasion and not an illegal tax evasion. But an illegal evasion is when you have a twisted intention to hide taxes to be paid, when you are faking the amounts in regards to the payment that you have to provide the state. But there are other ways of evading taxes legally, obviously, through the understanding of the law, as the example that I have just shared with you. And this is called legal tax evasion. So, having mentioned this already, I place here for you the Mexican Social Security, the obligations that the condominium has, and I have already mentioned that I found the labor risk, for example, illness, maternity, disability, being elderly, daycare centers, and social services. So I have briefly touched all of this, but well, this act article that I have before me is Article 11 of the Social Security Act, and it states the fact that it is mandatory for the condominium unit that the Social Security will be uh, covering for labor risks, all the maternity, all the illnesses, disabilities, elderly, and also the retirement and the social rights. For example, if you have a labor accident, you have to be protected from all of this risk. Let's say that you're working in a condominium unit and you have an accident. If you, it has to be fully protected. And of course, if you get sick, well, you have to bring the medical waiver to your employer, and then you can enjoy your salary, but also being absent as long as the waiver is allowing you to do it. And well, this has to do also with pregnant women, and also, age and disability conditions that will prevent you physically from doing a work uh, that will make it impossible for you to continue working. I mean, this has to do with your the movement limitations, or if your thinking will bring you to senility or arteriosclerosis or other type of diseases. So let's say that if you are disabled mentally or physically, there is a legal element that will allow you to present this to your employer. But if you lose your ability uh, to work, or you become disabled, and the Social Security will be protecting you. Uh, and of course, if you are retired, giving old age, we used to talk about 60 years of age. For example, I personally have considered that when I get 65, I will get my Social Security pension, and then if it is true that notary publics have a job for life, as long as we live, well, this only has to do with a government official, that in the case of my personal situation, I have a regulating entity within the state, and basically this has to do with the Ministry of Government, where there is a undersecretary of legal and notarial affairs, and there is a director within the same line, and they are to supervise all the notary public's activities in a state such as uh, the state of Guerrero, and it applies to every other state in Mexico. All of these group of benefits are regulated by the Federal Labor Act in Article 123. Now, retirement savings, well, it has to do with a 2% retention regarding the worker's salary, and this is allocated and earmarked for a retirement fund, and these savings are handed over to the employees, so they will have a dignifying uh, elderly years, where in a certain moment of their life they could get a hold of these retirement funds saved, and they are also called SAR. This is the retirement savings tax, actually. Now, we have talked about Article 123 of the Constitution, wherein it's Section 12, uh, Section 4, Chapter 3, refers to the fact that workers should have a dignifying housing guaranteed, and there is a 5% retention of the daily integrated salary of the workers, but it includes a proportional uh, amount that he has to do with their uh, vacation bonus, holiday bonus, retirement bonus, and their savings. So it is in itself quite an important tax imposition here, because when we consider the amount delivered to this Infonavit, to the Housing Institute, is a considerable amount. And of course, it has serious legal consequences, basically economic consequences, when you are not paying or contributing to what the Federal Labor Act mandates. And within a condominium unit, the administration and the assets of condominium unit owners could be uh, seized or could, in case you do not pay this housing tax. For example, anyone from Infonavit could come over and seize computers, elevators, the machinery from the that is needed within the condominium unit. Solar cells, and if the condominium association is the owner of certain goods, or it has assets that have been obtained with a civil executive process and that have been allocated to the condominium units, uh, given the process of payment that took place, or where someone was delinquent in paying their duties. Well, therefore, the condominium unit, through its legal department, could actually seize a unit and the goods of a condominium or the condominium association. We want you to recall that within the legal sphere, when they have been uh, seized, you can direct which goods are to be seized. The condominium association, let's say if they have a van that they use to buy all of the necessary elements that they need to look after the common areas, for example, chlorine, or it fixes lawn machines. Well, you can mention, for example, if this car is registered under the condominium management, you can direct which goods are to be seized until the legal obligation is settled. It is a tax obligation. Labor obligations. Let me relate to you that it is very important that all contracts are saved, not only those related to your workers, because if you ever come across a labor conflict, the employer could come over and say, well, I've been working with you for the past 20 years, and unless you have with you the contract where it mentions that they say that the worker has only been working with you for the past 3 years, well, they can actually elaborate all kinds of things done by their labor lawyers. Some of them are not very ethical in their behavior. You can face serious problems if you don't have the labor contracts before you. My advice is for you to save any document, any contract of whatever work is conducted within the condominium unit. Quite often, there are companies that you will be hiring, and then they will say, no, we didn't work for you directly. We worked for this other unit. So the fact that you have evidence of whatever is done within the condominium unit should be fully documented and saved, so you will not be having any further uh, concept that will be challenging your what you're saying or what you are demonstrating legally. So to safeguard within your filing system all of the contracts is very important. We have also talked about the arbitration federal conciliation board. What is issued here is an award that are the final decisions of the judge's decision. And here I also talked about the Federal Energy Commission. I'm referring to it to you in my book because there is a chapter where the condominium and the government officials are referred to here. And I'm sharing with you a summary of the legal system that we have in Mexico from the point of view of public law. That we have a political constitution, we have talked about the different hierarchy that the laws have, such as the statute of the civil association, the bylaw of the condominium unit. It will have to do with the Condominium Act of the state where this condominium unit is located. It will have to do with the civil code, the civil procedural code, also the political constitution of Mexico. And well, I also share with you here how the branches of power are in Mexico. which is kind of like a limited demonstration of public law, just to let you know how the different governmental entities are placed, the different element regarding, for example, being a federal uh, place. For example, in the United States, every city has a light and power company. Very seldom it's a full company for the whole state. They used to have, for example, particular telephone companies for each city and for each state. Mexico has a different case. We have an hegemonic company called Teléfonos de Mexico, which is now a private owned company. It used to be publicly owned, it used to be state owned. And we also have the Federal Energy Commission. President Lopez Mateos nationalized the energy industry, such as it's the case that President Cardenas nationalized the oil industry. Uh, and it is in itself a public entity. This is why I have to let you know that we must have full clarity of the legal status of an condominium association, because an arbitrary collection, for example, coming from the Energy Commission, well, it could be challenged through the amparo trial system, which is another attribute of legal persons, uh, such as the civil condominium association, which is susceptible of promoting an amparo trial, which is something that could be done also by a legal person. This is another attribute where we clearly can realize that a legal person of this kind, uh, that will be settling, for example, any common uh, conflict of interest or any problem within the condominium, could be presenting all of the legal actions, uh, within the federal, state, or local government, such as the Federal Energy Commission. This in itself, once you read my book, you will identify this more clearly. Now, for our last presentation, we will be sharing the judicial process for the recovery of maintenance fees. That, let me say something in advance. In itself, it is a civil and executive trial that is based on the idea that when we sign up our property deed and we acquire in a public deed our condominium unit, it is attached to this document the bylaw of the condominium unit complex bylaw, and within this, we are mandated to pay maintenance fees to the reserve fund, and to have a summary within 1 hour or 2 hours in English, uh, or summarize it so we can explain foreign owners the different restrictions that come as a result of Article 17 of the Constitution that we have touched, uh, given the different situations that we have had in Mexico as a result of the very famous um, cake war, where a French baker requested the intervention of its country in 1838, a war that lasted for 2 years, and it and as a result of this, restrictions have been imposed to foreign investment in Mexico, and certain filters or screens that whenever a foreigner purchases land in the border areas or in the uh, shores of Mexico, they need a banking permit where this foreign citizen has a personal right, yet the banking institution has a real right. We have seen this in great detail during our second presentation. This is all I had for you, dear friends. I thank you for your kind attention, and we shall meet again in our last conversation where we will talk about the procedure to recover or to collect the maintenance fees from any delinquent condominium owner. Thank you very much and good day.